All right. So welcome, Chris and Autumn. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you that don't know, my name is Tammy. I am one of the directors here at Lawrence Institute for Education. And a couple of years back, I was lucky enough to partner with Gilbert PD and Chris about getting some teaching and filling in the gap between what Lawrence Institute does and what Gilbert PD does in terms of how we help our community and how we help those specifically with developmental disabilities. So here at Lawrence, we have a system, we work with all our kids, we love them and it's great. But as the police are growing through their academy, that's kind of the hole that was missing. So we partnered together to try and bridge that gap. And then we were lucky enough to partner with Chris and his wife, Autumn, who are here today to talk to us about Preston's pursuit for acceptance. So Chris, I'm gonna turn it over to you guys and you are free, the floor is yours.
Perfect. What I'll do is I'll do screen share and we'll make this, hopefully this works. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So a little bit about our organization. So in our organization, I have been a police officer for, been in law enforcement for 25 years, ranging from corrections through crime scene investigation, all the way through all the ranks in the police department. I currently hold right now as a lieutenant. And I've taught use of force and different disciplines, defensive tactics, and taser, and different things. And we had realized, Autumn and I, at a younger age, for our son Preston, who is 18 years old now, when he was about 4 or 5, that he wasn't meeting his milestones, and we got the diagnosis that he was on the spectrum. And I started looking back at some of the training that we provide to our police officers and the situations that we're required to respond to and what the community wants from us. And that's kind of what blew into this beautiful organization and partnership that we have with Lawrence Institute and with Preston's Pursuit for Acceptance, named after our son, Preston. Autumn, if you want to talk a little bit real quick about you, and then we can start going through some of the slides.
Yeah, so my name's Autumn. I'm a proud mother of 2 boys. Our oldest son, Preston, we adopted when he was 1 week old. And, not having a lot of background about, his story, we, being brand new parents, we had a lot to learn. But as he got a little older, we started to realize that we had some challenges and we needed to investigate because he was not meeting those milestones. We would notice that he would co-play and so I was on a mission to find out what was going on, investigate, and get him some help and some support. And so, anyways, we got him to the doctor. We got the diagnosis, and I realized I was on a mission from then on, and became a very determined mom to make sure that I was going to get every resource, every tool possible for my child. So that's just been my life story from then on. So that's what I've done. I'm also the wife of a law enforcement officer. So I'm a huge advocate, not only for my boys, but also as a law enforcement wife. I believe in, a success story for all. And so as we began to see some situations for our first responders that were not always a success story, we realized we needed to create better tools and better information and better training. So we were determined to create that for them. So we built this nonprofit, and we're very proud of it. And the partnership that we have built with Lawrence Institute for Education is amazing, and we're so proud of it. And so here we are today, and we're so happy to be here.
And so going back to some of the slides, hopefully everybody can still see my slides. So like this incident that we have here showing up, this is the incident in Buckeye that was really pivotal for Autumn and I to want to make a change and make a difference. And all too often, our police officers are going to calls unequipped, as Autumn pointed out, to deal with the situations with the neurodivergent community or individuals with disabilities. And what we want to do is be able to provide better resources and stop the headlines like these and start figuring out ways to make these interactions more meaningful and safer for everybody. Everybody still see the slides while I'm going through this?
Yes.
So we talk a little bit when we're talking to our first responders about what is autism spectrum disorder, for example, and some of the things that we as first responders, just by the nature of the way we do our job, are bringing more challenges to these individuals. We're basically bringing all these oversensory devices with us, with our sirens, our lights, the way we contact people, our voices, and then our training and how our trainings as law enforcement officers, not Preston's Pursuit training, but how our law enforcement training has really told law enforcement that when individuals don't act a certain way, these are potential signs for lethality or potential dangerous signs. And what we're trying to do is break that stigma and say that it is more than just what we are being taught in the academy, that we need to look at the whole picture and use all of our senses to be better equipped to handle these calls and to make quicker differentiations between impairment and neurodivergence or a diagnosis. And we bring terms along like stimming and explain those to individuals. We also highlight on the fact that 1 in 36 individuals currently in the United States are being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and those are new diagnoses, usually when they're younger individuals. Finding out, and Autumn and I found out just recently that there's an individual that works at the police department that was just diagnosed right around the time of their 30th birthday. And so, I mean, there are more undiagnosed individuals out there. We need to be better equipped to serve the communities that we are serving and not expect them to be able to interact with us better. I did a graduate studies for my graduate degree, and one of the research papers I chose to write on, and my thesis was the lack of consistent and standardized training for first responders on specific disabilities, most specifically right now, autism. And most of the officers that were surveyed in my research paper and all the other papers that I looked at felt they were not provided with enough training. And when they were given training, how much more confident they felt and how much they were less likely to resort to using force on individuals that were neurodivergent based on the fact they were able to identify this was not impairment or suspicious or deviant behavior. And again, we saw this. I did this in a research paper. We looked at this and we decided something has to change. And that's where our picture and our life comes in. And this is our amazing family right here. And you heard about my story. You heard about Autumn's story and why it is our why and why it is so important. And again, we realize that our son, when he gets overstimulated, is just our son the way he gets overstimulated. Every other individual has different mannerisms and behaviors and things that they do when they are overstimulated. So we are trying to just share the story through our eyes and educate our first responders on, if you just start looking at it from our perspective, you'll start realizing everybody's different. And again, don't start trying to pigeonhole things into a certain situation to make you feel comfortable. Our mission, again, as we've talked about, is to get these tools out there for our first responders to be more successful in the community. One of the unintended situations that we had happen that we weren't even anticipating was our first responders are parents as well, brothers and sisters. And what we were finding out is that they were having family members that were recently diagnosed or undiagnosed, or that have been diagnosed and they didn't get the tools and they didn't get the information they needed to be good at home with their parent as parents. And what we found out is when these individuals were struggling at home, then they're coming to work. And so we're trying to help out both sides of the equation. We're trying to help these first responders out at home to be good at home. So when they get to work, they can be good at work. And when they're good at work, they're also more likely to be good at home. And so that is kind of our mission and our resources that we're providing out to our first responders, like our partnership with Life and helping people get diagnoses for their children and get resources and start getting therapies and getting some answers to these diagnosis sheets that you get.
So if I might add, we believe really strongly in the resources that we provide. I remember like it was yesterday, the day that we received the diagnosis for Preston. I remember what a gut punch feeling that was for us. I remember feeling, what now? What do I do with this? And literally it was a piece of paper handed to me, and there was no what do I do next? There was no resources handed to me. There was no support system. I literally was just standing there with a diagnosis. And so I feel it is all too important to make sure that we provide support, that we provide resources, that we are that safe place to land, because I know that feeling, and I know how lost you can feel when you have that. And so I have worked really hard to make sure that we've reached out to every company, every individual that is on that resource list, and make sure that they want to be on that list. And we've worked with them personally, and it's important information. And we don't just provide it to our first responders. We make sure that they have it not just for their families, but they bring it to them when they go to these calls for service, so that if they're dealing with, a family that might be in crisis that's struggling, it's probably because they're struggling because they don't know where to go next. And so they can provide this support system, this resource, somewhere to go next. I just feel like it's so important.
And thank you. This training that we're providing, it's a unique training because there's other people that are out there providing training, and there's organizations. We're trying, when we do our training, to get organizations to buy into a culture shift. And it's more than just a box that you're going to take the training from Preston's Pursuit or from the partnership of Preston's Pursuit with Life. We're going to kind of emulate that model with every community that we go to, so that they can start realizing that it is about accepting individuals with disabilities, about being open to working with them and interacting with them before a crisis situation happens. And so that's why we feel that this is, again, like this slide says, more than just a check the box training. We're not going to play a video in the background and let the employees look at it and then put in for credit. It's an interactive training, and they're going to get skills that are going to help them to be more successful. Right now, some of the topics that we're covering in our first iteration of training is what is autism and what are some good ways to respond to it. Again, how to help people quicker, these first responders, identify between impairment and a disability, ways to ask open-ended questions, and ways to communicate with the parent or the provider. And a lot of times in the police officer world, and even in the fire world, when you're an adult and we're having an interaction with you, we won't talk to their parent, even though their parent is the one that's their strongest advocate and the one that can give us the most information. So we're trying to teach them that even though you're dealing with maybe an adult, they're not an adult, and the parent's going to provide information to you to help this interaction become more successful for everybody involved. One of the things that we've done, again, through our partnership with Gilbert Police Department, Preston Pursuit, and Lawrence Institute, is we created a SAFE event, which is a sensory awareness family event. And those events are where we are allowing individuals that have disabilities to come out and interact with us, our first responders in the community of Gilbert, build relationships, meet the vendors that are out there, meet the providers that are out there, and interact with us in a safe environment, and not have to be in situations where they are around neurotypical individuals that are not going to be patient or cause a situation. I can remember personally so many times that we would go to places with Preston, and he wasn't comfortable in like bounce house areas, and he wasn't comfortable in parties for birthday parties and stuff. And so what we want to do is make this a safe environment and a safe culture for our first responders, again, to have meaningful interactions with individuals with disabilities. Our trainings aren't designed just for police officers and firefighters, because everybody has an interaction with somebody on the spectrum or somebody with a disability. So it is for police, fire, paramedics, security, school administrators, school educators, TSA agents, event security at sporting events, right? We want the environment, because when you have a disability, you don't want to be treated different. You want to be accepted. And you want to be accepted in with everybody else. And so we want everybody that could have an interaction with somebody with a disability to understand that individual has a disability. You don't have to treat them differently or feel awkward about them. Treat them the same, but make sure that the environment and the setting is set up for them to be successful in there and for us to be successful. And again, what we're looking at is trying to reduce this risk and lower the instances of uses of force from first responders, lowering the instances of when individuals are incarcerated when it's not a criminal matter and they get incarcerated, and ultimately lowering liability not only for the first responders, but their municipalities and their agencies, and also avoid creating scars for these first responders. Because one thing that Autumn has always talked about is first responders don't want to go out and use force on an individual that has a disability. And they feel horrible about it, and they have to live with that for the rest of their lives when they find out after the fact that person never had the ability to comply with what we as first responders wanted them to comply with. So we're trying to limit all of those. Again, it's happening. It's happening here in Gilbert with Lawrence Institute, Gilbert Police Department, fire department. Every police officer that's newly hired that goes through our academy, and every firefighter that's hired that goes through the fire academy does a day with life where they learn and they get to do hands-on kind of just viewing with the amazing staff at Life to see all the different individuals out there and beautiful about them and how to accept them and treat them the right way and not treat them differently. So that's really what our organization's about. Autumn, if you have more stuff you want to discuss and talk about, go right ahead. I'll stop sharing now.
I think the key here is just making sure that we're creating a safe space for all, for our community. That's the most important piece for us. I know our son, Preston, the most important thing for him is that he's not looked at as different, that he's just accepted for him. And I know that he's not alone in that. And so we believe strongly that that's important. So we want to continue that for as many people as we can. We're really passionate about this, so we're trying our hardest to continue to have a voice, not only for our first responders but for the special needs community because it's important, and we want to make sure that we're giving the proper tools, the proper information, we're educating. And we're doing this the right way because, again, it's important. So this matters. And we have started in Gilbert. Gilbert PD has been excited about the training they're receiving. It's been overwhelming, the positive response that we've received about this training. And we are continuing to spread the word within different agencies. And so it's just, we're hitting the pavement hard and just continuing to spread the word about our training and hoping to get more agencies to take us on because that's what we want to do.
Thank you. One of the things that we also really want to do is build a partnership with parents of our special needs dependents. And one of the most important things that we can really stress and focus is, depending on your age, I know I'm a little bit older, and I remember that when I was growing up, before we had 911, we would have on the side of the refrigerator the numbers to call in case of an emergency. We kind of want to bring that back and work with Lawrence Institute and with their consumers and their clients and their family members to kind of have a pre-911 checklist or script of what they should really create and have that's important about their family, their household, and their loved ones, so that when they call 911 in the moment of an emergency, that they don't have to remember all these important things while they're dealing with the emergency right in front of them. They can say things over the phone to our dispatchers that are going to help our dispatchers get the information that's most important to us to be able to respond to these houses, residences, and locations and provide assistance and not have to try and figure it out. So for example, if you were using our household, if I were to call 911 about something that happened to our son, some of the first things I would say is, hey, I need police and fire at my house. My son fell and got hurt. He's 18 years old. He's a level 2 individual on the autism spectrum, and he gets overstimulated with loud noises. That information right there is going to answer about 50% of the questions that our dispatchers are going to need to get out from you and get out to our first responders. So when we respond, we already know, guess what? We're not going to turn on our lights and sirens right away. We're going to slow things down when we get in the house. We might not be yelling. We're going to come in and we're going to understand that Preston's on the spectrum. And through the training that we provide, we're going to understand, and our first responders are going to understand, we're not going to come in right away and already think that we can start touching Preston or doing things and talking to him. We might have to take more time and be patient with him. And ultimately, it seems like it might be more time, but it's actually going to be quicker because we're going to get to where we need to get to resolve maybe the medical emergency versus trying to find out what's going wrong in the first place and what's going to work to interact with them.
I love that, Chris. And that was going to lead to one of the questions I had, if I may. Are there things that parents can be doing now proactively with regards to emergency responders? Is there means for them to communicate proactively with potentially dispatch or fire or police, things that they could be doing now that could enable your departments to have better communication on their homes and what is happening within their homes and with their loved ones?
Absolutely. There's a couple of programs. I'll speak one locally about the Gilbert, and it's called the Bring Me Home program. So it's a voluntary opt-in program, and family members or providers, caregivers can basically go to Gilbert Police Department, Bring Me Home, and they can go to that website, and literally whatever they're willing to share about their loved one, they can include names, date of birth, communication styles, photographs, potential things that overstimulate individuals, their likes, what they're drawn to, places they like to walk, nicknames, any identifying features like tattoos or anything like that, scars or anything, so that we can get this information uploaded in our system that's secure only to police personnel. But if we ever have a call for service at the residence or with the individual, and we have their name and date of birth and we're out on the scene with them, information will be provided to us that, hey, this information lives at this house, this is their disability, this is their communication method, like for autism, verbal, nonverbal, hearing impaired, any of those things, AAC device. And so our first responders are going to be able to get there to help already know what we need to do. Or if we have an interaction with the individual out in the street and maybe they've eloped and wandered, we already know where they belong because we can pull up a photograph and see where that individual lives. And we already have the contact information for who their caregiver is, emergency contact, and start making that communication. There's another program through the Department of Disabilities, or I always mess it up, through DDD.
Department of Developmental Disabilities.
Why don't you go ahead and keep running on that
Called
one?
the Medallion Program. It's been around for about 20 years, but not everybody knows about it. They don't really bring it up a lot. It's not shared a lot, so there's not a lot of knowledge, but we have implemented into our training because we want to share this information, make sure families are aware of it. It is something that if you are part of, DDD and you have a support coordinator, you can let your support coordinator know that you want this. And with the Medallion program, you can either receive like a ID bracelet, or if you have, if your family member has sensory issues and a bracelet is not going to work for them and they can't wear that, then they also have like a little ID tag that can go on their shoelace as an alternative piece as well. And on that is an ID number, and then also a phone number, and then all of their information is saved in the system. And then that way, if, like, say for instance, they've eloped and law enforcement has come in contact with them, and they'll see that information, they'll see the ID number, the tag, and then they'll know that they need to call the 24-hour number to DDD, and then they'll know how to get them back with the family. So that's another program, is through DDD. And again, you contact your support coordinator and you let them know that you want the Medallion program and that they sign you up. It's really quick and easy, and they take care of it for you.
And again, Margaret, families can go and show up to the police department or call their crime prevention units, because every police department pretty much has one, and say, hey, do you do tours? Can we do family groups? Can we bring people in to do tours with first responders to see the police department? And they can also talk about, like, again, creating that pre 911 checklist. And I think going through working with Tammy, like we have with Life, that's something that could be easily instituted, that families can start doing these things. So we know the important things about your household and your loved one, so that when we show up as first responders, we're going to be better equipped to communicate with and interact with and resolve whatever the situation might be.
I want to
Yeah.
make sure and point out with the Bring Me Home program, it is all voluntary. So you're not being forced to share anything you don't want to. So it is all what you feel comfortable sharing. But again, what you do share helps when, say, for example, there is an elopement situation. The more information that you are sharing, the more successful that our law enforcement would be in getting your family member back home. But again, it's all voluntary.
And I appreciate that information so much. And sadly, and again, I'm older too, Chris. So, I come from a generation where, you didn't have to anticipate the bad stuff, if you will, and you didn't have to live in such a world that you have to really be proactive and reactive sometimes. And I really love the seed that's being planted here in sharing all the systems, if you will, of ways in which our families can be proactive in helping our first responders best serve their families in moments of crisis. Because what we do know is, if and when the moment of crisis happens, our response systems won't always react the way in which we would want. And it's so much better to have all that out there in a moment of calmness, so that if or when that moment happens, you can have the necessary information. And I love that. And I really, really hope that we continue this dialogue. And I'm really interested if any of our parents, the feedback that they provide today, because I just know the more parents we talk to and the more information we gain from them and their fears and their concerns and their questions, the more that we can build on it to create systems of learning. And so I'm just so grateful. So thank you both.
Absolutely. That's what this is all about. I know, like, for example, for our son, one day you might have a conversation with him. He's verbal and he could tell you his name, his date of birth. But the next time you interact with him, he can't tell you his name, his date of birth. He completely shuts down. So this is again why this is so personal and important to us. We get it. We know. We understand. So we really want the success story for our community. It matters.
And I think one of the biggest things is for parents also to understand is that first responders want to help, and they don't want to be used as like a fear or a discipline. And I'm not shaming anybody, but there's been so many times I've been at lunch and parents are like, see that guy over there? If you're not good, he's going to come and he's going to get you. And what they're already doing is instilling in that child that we are the scary, we are the danger, right? And if they're misbehaving, it's going to happen. And yes, that is true to a degree. But I think what we need to start telling our individuals, and whether you're neurotypical or not, have a special need or not, is if you need something, a first responder is there to help you. And I think that's kind of where we as a society can do a better job, is start being so decisive or divisive and start saying, we're here to help. Let's find a way, like Margaret said, to mutually come together to make that help happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I am curious if we had any questions from our parents at this time.
Sounds like maybe not this time. I'm not seeing anything in the chat either. So I am going to stop the recording, but I do just want to say thank you so much for Chris and Autumn and coming to meet with us today to, spread the word about what we're trying to do, both as a partnership and, how we can help the greater community. So we will continue this conversation into the future. And like I said, I really do appreciate you guys meeting with us and getting to know our families. Being part of the community, but also being part of, how we can help shape the future for all of our friends.
Thank you so
Tammy,
much.
if I may?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Autumn.
I just want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate the time and being given the platform, and we just really appreciate being here and this amazing partnership.
Thank you. Tammy, if you could remind us, there will be one more conversation, I believe, next week.
Yes,
remind us of that.
Yep, we are scheduled to meet again in the evening at 6 p.m. on the 30th of October. So we can get this recording up for anybody who didn't get a chance to see it. If you want to come, pass the word. We'll post it on our socials so that everybody who maybe couldn't make it today, because it's kind of a midday lunch hour, that they can come in hopefully in the evening, and we'll get both of those posted for the greater good.